This is a Happy Dad's Day episode in the second season of Dynasty Sports, and we had to take a school break. My EP, executive producer, finishing up his degree at Oklahoma State University, computer engineering, Mr. Anth, and he successfully completed that, and he's back. So I think that we're going to get to put a series of these together. Although he starts real job time Monday, I'm hoping that he doesn't have to work too hard on the weekends. We and him take off and go do some things. So here we go. Not many people can say that they've been to multiple places and had success. And our guest today has had success at every point in venture, including being the best dad in the world. This is the Happy Dad's Day episode. And so I believe in 1967 he started off at the Tulsa Blue Tea Club, where he had a 55-1 dual record. And we're going to get in past this in this TJAA thing, and we'll talk a little bit here about it in a minute. But he won 5 straight city championships, and I don't know, the people out there that are watching this will know that to win a city championship's like winning an NCAA or an Olympic championship back during that time. And so went to Tulsa Booker T. Washington in 1973.
73, 4, yep.
Yeah, 1973, Booker T. Washington, coached there for 7 years. Won state championships, I believe 76, 77, 78, and 79. Was runner-up in 1980. Got bumped up to the big class. Went to Tulsa Webster in 1980 and was there until 1996. Coached wrestling to 1994. 4 state championships, multiple time runner-ups. He just told me before we started this, the runner-ups just blow your mind and just kill you. And then ended up at Cascia Hall Prep here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Started a program. He started a program at Booker T. Washington. He started a program here at Cascia Hall Prep. 121 individual state champions, 16 team championships, 14 NCAA Division I All-Americans, part of the Tulsa Public School Hall of Fame, National Wrestling Hall of Fame, Oklahoma Coaches Association Hall of Fame. He had 2 NCAA champions in Rod Kilgore and Kenny Mundy, and an NCAA runner-up and Coach Rod Jones, an Olympic gold medalist in Kenny Mundy. And like I had said before, man, the most important thing here today is that he is the greatest dad. He's the greatest grandpa that us boys and our kids could ever have. And let's welcome the GOAT, Coach Ernie Jones. And the crowd goes crazy.
Crowd goes crazy.
The crowd goes crazy. And this is my Paul. So here we go. We've been talking about this for a while, Dad.
Yes, that's true.
So here's a big thing is people don't really know where you're from. Now we could go through the dynamics of born in San Francisco, moved to Shawnee, but at 5 years old you ended up in Sapulpa, Oklahoma, living on the Oaks Country Club.
That's true.
Now this is something that you don't know. Do you know it's one of the most prestigious country clubs in Oklahoma right now?
That's true.
Do you know the waiting list to get into the Oaks Country Club is like in the hundreds?
I didn't know that.
Do you know to join the Oaks Country Club, it's $20,000 up front?
I did not know that.
So he lived there. He grew up there on the Oaks Country Club, and where he got to start. He goes to Sapulpa High School, which that is in the Sapulpa district. I know it's
Creek
a little
County.
It's Creek County. It's a little west though of Sapulpa.
It's on the county line.
It's on the county line. What would you consider the county line? Would that be 30-30?
I think it's 49th.
Oh, 49. Yeah. 49 is county line.
I think so.
That's Creek County. I didn't know that. He goes to Sapulpa. He spends his entire educational career at Sapulpa Public Schools. kind of went around his sophomore year, which I believe would have been 1959, 60.
60, that's right.
59, 60, and is approached by a little short. I don't know if he was red-faced then. Was he red-faced then?
He was young then, so.
No, not so red-faced. And an important figure in his life, Jerry Billings, asked him to join the high school wrestling team as a sophomore at Sapulpa High School. Now, my brother Rod has turned into a historian, and it goes, here's who Jerry Billings is. Jerry Billings is a part of the lineage of Oklahoma State University wrestling greatness. I mean, he was coached by Myron Roderick. Yes, he was coached by Myron Roderick. Myron Roderick was coached by Art Griffith. Art Griffith was coached by Gallagher. Ed Gallagher. And so my dad's fresh start as a sophomore, never been in a wrestling room, came with Jerry Billings at Sapulpa High School. He was a 2-time state placer. Starting as a sophomore, his junior and senior year, he placed in the state wrestling tournament. And of course, all us coaches that are watching this, we'd love to have an Ernie Jones in our room that comes out as a sophomore and places twice. And there wasn't but 3 classes or 2 then.
It's 2, and we were in the big class to start, and then they created the second class, yeah.
So 2 classes and created the big class the senior year. And then here's where we kind of get it. You went to college at Northeast Missouri?
Northwest Missouri State.
Northwest Missouri State, and what is that?
Maryville, Missouri.
Maryville, Missouri. Now that's south. That's north of Kansas City.
North of Kansas City.
Went there out of high school?
No, not at all. I didn't get any offers, certainly, coming out of high school. And then I had the opportunity to go to Northwest Missouri State on scholarship. And it was a great situation. And I did well that first semester there. I came home Thanksgiving and I went to Webster High School to work out over Thanksgiving break. And they had an OU All-American by the name of Miller. And at first he was reluctant to let me practice with them, but about Wednesday of that week he said, who are you, and would you like to go to OU? And of course I said I would love to go to OU. So that's how that turned around.
So you ended up going to the University of Oklahoma from Northwest Missouri.
Well, in the meantime I had a car wreck and broke my jaw, and
so you didn't successfully go.
I had to wait till that was over, and then I went there and met with Port Robertson. And explained the situation, and I remember the main question was, Port Robertson was quite a historical figure in the University of Oklahoma, a big burly guy who coached Danny Hodge.
Coach Danny Hodge, and probably would have been coaching against Art Griffith.
Yeah, he said that he was so glad to see Danny Hodge come to Oklahoma, and he was so glad when he left because he was so tough. He was about the only one that could wrestle with him. But anyway, I got the opportunity to wrestle for Tommy Evans. And I had a good start. I moved, I know there was 5 on the board, I remember, the ranking board. There was 5. I was number 5 when I came through the room. And I worked my way to number 1 and had a shot, it looked like, to make the varsity. I had a challenge number 1. But this was the height of the Vietnam War. And I got drafted. Coach Evans, Tommy Evans was the coach, a remarkable man. And he called me in and he said, hey, you've been drafted. And he said, I think I can get you into the Oklahoma National Guard because he Air Force National Guard. Yeah. He says, I think we can get you in there. He was an officer. And the Air National Guard, I think, something like that. And he did. And so it looked like everything was cool. But at this point, I'm 21 years old, and the height of the bad times of the Vietnam War. And a couple of weeks later, he came to me and said they're not going to accept it. And so I had to withdraw. That would end my chances of ever being a college wrestler. And I reported to the draft board. I reported my third physical, because back then you took physicals every time they pulled you up. And on my way out, I joined the Marines, and I was walking out the door. A Marine officer pulled me aside and told me the United States Marines couldn't use me. I said, "You're kidding." He said, "The United States Marines don't kid. Here's your ticket home." So that put me into limbo at that point.
Which is awesome, because I went last weekend out to Claremont shotguns with him, and he wouldn't have made it home. He wouldn't have made it home from Vietnam. He couldn't hit a target within 2 foot. And so you get going in limbo. You go in your limbo stage. And we're talking about 1967 in West Tulsa, which is a place that we all grew up in, and we historically take great pride in.
Definitely.
The generations that we got to be a part of. I don't really know what's going on over there right now, but the generations that we're proud West Tulsa people.
Amen.
And in 1967, there was something that lured you into the Blue Tea wrestling room and start coaching. Who was that? What was that?
It was wrestling. I had spent some time as a normal citizen on the street and had married a wonderful woman. You know her.
I do.
And
Vacuuming once a while ago.
And I was with my brother. We were jointly racing in the NC National Hot Rod Association, but I had come to the end of that. I didn't have a future. I had a wife. I had a child. And
not in '67, you didn't.
Well, by the time that's true. You didn't come along
you're
till
starting,
69.
You're starting. You're aging me. See, that's stuff that but who? There was nobody that came and said, "Ernie, you need to get in the."
No, not a soul.
So you just walked in there one day.
I did. I said I would like. Dan Mayer was the head Blue Tea wrestling coach, a wonderful gentleman.
Great gentleman.
And I said I'd like to assist you, and I got to work with him a year, and then he turned the program over to me. And of course I was young and fit and got to wrestle every day with the guys, and we had a wonderful, wonderful time.
And you did that 5 years.
5 years.
And most notable coming out of that program would have been a Rod Kilgore.
Amazing human being, and certainly.
Rod Kilgore is a two or three time.
Two-time national champion. He, on the third, somewhere in that process, he got, in the tournament, got a tremendous eye injury. It almost blinded him, and I think he placed that year, but on default, he came down the line. Went back the next year and got his second national championship.
Rod Kilgore, University of Oklahoma, Tulsa Webster, 3-time champ. Back then, you couldn't be a 4-time champ.
True.
And so he got a. But you know, here's the deal that people don't understand, and this is kind of what me and Anthony are going to get into this summer, and we may not put them out weekly, but we're going to put them out. Is real fast. You got to coach from '67, I believe, to '72. That's 5 years. In what was referred to as the TJAA, which is the Tulsa Junior Wrestling Association here in the city of Tulsa, and kind of get in just real fast, just kind of touch what that was and why it was so incredibly tough.
It was the height of the Tulsa Public School wrestling situation, which had always been powerful. And it was the height of that moment. This is the pinnacle. And it was as tough as any wrestling tournament I've ever been to in my life. Out of that came national champions, Rodney Kilgore, various champions came out of it. It was as tough as it got. And across the city of Tulsa was as great a wrestling as you could get anywhere.
And you guys loaded up, and they were usually recreational parks here in Tulsa.
They would represent, different Northwest Quarterback Club, Whiteside, the
Hamilton.
Blue Tea Club, Hamilton. Hamilton came in as I was leaving, pretty much, Coach McCutcheon and Hamilton, right? But that was pretty much the climax of the Tulsa Junior Wrestling Association.
It was because it kind of had, when I think I wrestled in the city championship.
You did.
But it wasn't by any means
It's going away.
what it was back during that time period. And you, is this what kind of, which I know these answers, but is this what kind of pushed you in a direction to go back and get your degree?
I approached your mother at a point and said to her, I would love to go back and get my degree. I had some hours, and I would love to go back and get my degree. I was going to work for your mother, your grandmother at the Reed Recreation Center at night, go to school in the daytime. And your mother was 100% behind it. She thought college-educated people made money, and I never will.
Well, they do,
Well,
with exception.
I never will forget when I brought my first paycheck home from Tulsa Public Schools. I was so proud, and I think that's the closest I ever got to being divorced. If it hadn't been the fact that I had children, she would have canned me, I think. But
So he's saying he goes back to school, he graduates through the motivation of, I think he kind of felt, you felt a kinship, a calling that you could be a wrestling coach, and you knew you enjoyed it.
I don't call wrestling a sport or an after-school activity. Wrestling to me is an institution, and when you, as you well know, when you take part in it and you're serious about it, it's not a sport. It changes your life. If you put your heart and soul into it, it's going to repay you. That's the way I've always looked at it with every individual that I've ever taught the sport of wrestling, including you. And it's obvious that our family has been a very active part in the institution of wrestling.
So going into Booker T. Washington, 1973, you get the job. You had several people come to you and say,
Oh, everybody.
what are you doing?
It was, we know there's racial situations in the world and it still exists today, which we're trying to overcome. But I really feel like I got the job at Booker T. Washington, and I'm being sincere because no one wanted. I had no high school experience. All I had was those 5 years at Blue T, and I wanted that job. And I felt I got it sincerely because nobody else wanted it. Because here I am, what do I have? What credentials do I really have to be the head wrestling coach at Booker T. Washington High School? But to me, it was a golden opportunity that I really, really did want.
And I know they had an existing program, but they had just kind of a...
They had not gone to the... Ed Lacey was one of the greatest football coaches in the history of Tulsa Public Schools and a great leader. And so without wrestling experience, he was able to have successful teams, but he stepped away from that, and it's faltered to the point that the year that before I took it, they didn't even go to the regional.
So Ed Lacey was doing double duty. He was coaching.
Yes, he was. He was a great leader. He was.
That kind of makes me want. I've seen Ed Lacey. That'd be neat to. So 7 years at Booker T. Washington. 7 years. 73, 74, 75. Those before 76 through 79. What were those 3 years? That first year, that second year, that third year.
Oh, I felt it was such a. I guess you could say just such a. How can I put this? It was such a crude start. We just gathered up, and I would go daily by those young men's houses and pick them up and take them home, and we lived together. I had an old van, and that first year we went. I think it was 5. It was 5 and 6. We won 5 and lost 6. Second year we improved. Duels.
But how many did you qualify? Anybody the first year?
No, not the first year. Yeah, I did. I Milam Ake. I qualified one young man who took 4th in state.
Oh, wow. And placed.
Yeah.
All right, so that's 73, 74, 75.
74, 75, I think we finished in the top 5. Of course, I had the addition of a kid named Rodney Hooks and Thomas Landrum.
So that was their sophomore years?
Yeah.
So they were there in that first year as freshmen.
They went everywhere I went. No, they wasn't in school.
So Booker T did not have freshmen at?
They did, but they were, again, we're just getting started. And they came in as freshmen. Yeah, they came in as freshmen.
So they were there. They just couldn't compete.
But I took them. No, they couldn't. But I took them everywhere I went. So they wrestled exhibition
So
everywhere we went.
People knew what you had coming.
Yeah, they found that with those two, Hooks and Landrum, phenomenal pair of young men.
And then that's 74, 75. Here we go. The third year there, you've got Hooks and Landrum in the lineup, and you've developed in that third year. People have got to start feeling, oh, here.
I remember it was at Oral Roberts University. Now I had additions. I picked up Paul Parker, 6'3", 300 pound, coming into the room. I picked up Ronaldo Works off the football team. Yeah, Ronaldo Works Senior. These are never wrestled before people. Everybody with the sides of Hooks and Landrum pretty much had never wrestled, but they were part of the program and quick learners. And we went into that state tournament at Oral Roberts University looking good. But you had Duncan, Stillwater, Sand Springs. And Bobby Lyons was at Sand Springs, phenomenal coach, and favored to win it. And I remember standing and discussing it with those three guys. And actually, I wasn't. I was listening, and we were all standing there talking, and they were petting each other, telling each other they thought that they had the chance, that team had a chance, that team had a chance, and we weren't mentioned. But we took 7, and we put 6 of them in the finals.
Oh, my goodness, the third year?
Yeah. And if that was a 75, 76 year, yeah. And
well, no, this is your third year. Your fourth. So you were there 73, 74,
72,
74,
73.
Oh, this is your third year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Third year is the year. Third year you go rip off, put 6 in the finals.
And Ronaldo Works was the 7th. He had Ricky Stewart in the first round. Ronaldo Works it was his first year to wrestle, and he had Ricky Stewart, I think, in the semis. So he didn't get to place, but the rest of them did. They were in the finals, and that was it.
Took 7, 6 in the finals, won your first state championship, and we're going to get into.
We were in the basement of Oral Roberts University, and there's a big sign there that says, "Expect a miracle." And after we weighed in and we were walking out with the guys, I said, "Look at there, guys, expect a miracle." And I don't know that it was a miracle, but it was.
And the rest is history. 77, 78, 79. You guys rip off state championships 4 in a row. And we can stay here all. We could do a session of this with probably the Booker T team for sure, and then the Webster team, and then we could probably go into the Cascia Hall era, and we could probably do an episode. But most notably is interesting. Kenny Mundy, of course, got to wrestle as a freshman. They changed the rule.
That was the first freshman in Tulsa Public School history.
Got to change the rules, so he got to wrestle as a freshman. Therefore, Kenny Mundy, of course, is going to be a 4-time state champion, dominant. I believe his overall record was whatever. And he tied one match. And the one match that he tied was Mike Sheets, which was a 3-time NCAA champion from Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And I happened to be there in the building and young and watch that. But there's other Hornets that we could go into. You could go into a Hawkins, Eckerbood Thomas. You could talk about the Thomas Landrums. You've always said, somebody asked me who the greatest wrestler was in my tenure at Booker T. Washington. Rodney Hooks has to be right up there with.
Yeah, he would be. The lifestyle of these young men, it was heartaches. They had a hard time, and wrestling was their avenue. Rodney Hooks would be right there at the top of the list of kids that I
If
got
he
to-
had the direction as Kenny had.
if he had a life chance, if he had a chance, Kenny Mundy had two wonderful parents that were very strong people, and
Two older brothers.
two
Successful.
tough state runner-up brothers, and of course Kenny was a phenomenal, obviously two-time Olympian, three-time Olympian. But I think the key there would be the kids that came into the room, like a Ronaldo works. Paul Parker, who had never wrestled, but became dominant figures.
No, let's back up on the Paul Parker thing real fast. Paul Parker was 6'5".
6'3", 6'4".
Oh, okay, 6'4", 300 pounds. Ended up a two-time champ.
Yeah,
Ended up, but
he placed as a sophomore.
he got to the point that he's 300-pound man. He got to the point they started trying to emulate, I think, Kenny Mundy.
Yeah, he would wind up weighing 265 through the season. Nobody encouraged that.
He just lost weight.
He just worked.
Working out.
He worked as hard as any small guy in the room. And I remember, his sophomore year, I could wrestle with him a touch. His junior year, I remember wrestling with him in the room, and he took me off the floor into the air, and I said, "Oh!" And I didn't do that anymore. Sweetest human on the face of the earth.
University of Oklahoma, offensive lineman, all Big 8.
All Big 8.
All Big 8 offensive lineman. And you growing up young, look at Paul Parker. And for all you that don't know, that's Booger Paul Parker.
His official name, by the way.
Was Booger Paul?
Booger Paul Parker was his official name.
Oh, it was his official. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was a nickname.
No, that was his name.
And so you got through Booker T. In your last year, you got bumped up. In 1980, you got bumped up. It was Kenny, I believe, senior year. Who else would have probably... You guys got bumped up, and that was Midwest City, really.
Duncan, actually.
Oh, Duncan.
Duncan was... Mike Redding, I felt like... we've argued over this, so he's not going to be shocked, but I think we got politicked out of that class. And pushed up into the bigger class. 5 other schools were pushed up also. And so it was Midwest City that won the title that year, a great wrestling team. And we wrestled as fine and scored as much as I thought we could possibly score. And they legitimately beat us. They were better. But we would have won.
That was the height of...
That was it for them, I think. And we would definitely, I feel we would have won easily the 6th one. And
it's kind of, things work out the way they're supposed to, though. You got done, Kenny graduated. I think you had made the statement, I've heard you say that you made the statement, once Kenny graduates, you're going to quit coaching wrestling, because you got 3 young boys over there in West Tulsa that were already, elementary football players, wrestlers, baseball players, and you were going to kind of swing your devotion and come back. And so you resigned your Booker T. Washington wrestling position.
I told my principal I have 3 really good little white athletes. And they play baseball, they play football, they wrestle. And I just didn't see them reaching their potential at Booker T. And so I would love to stay at Booker T and teach. I loved the place. Tulsa Public Schools automatic trim list. If you leave your head coaching job, you're automatically on a trim list. And any school in Tulsa Public can pick you up. Tulsa Webster immediately picked me up, not to be their head wrestling coach, just picked me up.
But I had a plan.
And so automatically I'm at Tulsa Webster, where we live.
1980, we're West Tulsa. We lived in West Tulsa. We grew up, I went to Porter Elementary there, right off 41st Street, right across from Tulsa Webster. And I believe Biff did too. I think Rob was too young to go there. We were West Tulsa people, and in 1980, he's going to be teaching at Tulsa Webster. And now listen, there were West Tulsans that would have loved to have had you in 1973, I believe.
Well, yes, but the head coach there, he wasn't too much in favor of it. And I actually was going to intern at Tulsa Webster. When you come into the system, you intern a year. And I was going to intern at Tulsa Webster, but the Tulsa Webster coach didn't want me. And because of the blue tea, the popularity I had at blue tea. And so I was assigned to Tulsa McLean, which was fine. But I had a friend, Kenneth Hensley, was the head baseball coach, very successful baseball coach at Hale. And he said, well, he was working out at Reed in gymnastics with when your grandmother was in charge. And he said, well, come and intern with me.
He's the guy that took that to Jinx, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
right,
okay.
Exactly.
That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah. And so I did, and that's how that situation would develop. I interned at Tulsa Hale with Joe Chamberlain, Tulsa Hale team that was real successful, and it was a great experience.
Tulsa Public Schools, that was kind of that period. That I think that might have been falling off at about 80.
It starts to fall off.
Falling off at about that time. But here you come, Webster High School in 1980. You're assistant. I believe you were an assistant to Jim Baker.
I was.
Jim Baker was a nice guy.
Yeah.
Nice guy. You did it for 1 year, and then J.B. Haney put you in.
Well, Jim had the opportunity to go to East Central, which was really ripe and full of talent.
Right.
And Coach McCutcheon had helped to build, up to that program.
Absolutely.
And so he took the East Central job, which automatically made me the head coach at Webster. And that was the year. That's how we began our career there.
Well, there was one guy that was really happy, and his name was Ernie Jones.
That's true.
My dad's brother had a son that would have been possibly maybe a freshman the year you got there. Or sophomore.
Yeah, sophomore, I think.
He was sophomore.
Yeah.
And so you got to coach Tony for 2 years, and Uncle Randall couldn't have been more proud. And so let's talk about Webster. You're in West Tulsa now. You live in West Tulsa. I've always kind of prided myself on not living anywhere that I coach and teach. There's never been one spot that I've ever coached and taught that I've lived in that area. And here you are with 3 boys that weren't saints, good boys, but just ornery. You're in West Tulsa from 1980 to 1996, and you start this run, and you come up with probably the most vaunted dynasty builders. And that started about when? Because I remember going to the state wrestling tournament. Somebody would paint a sign and put up at the top of that thing when you could do that, dynasty builders. And my younger generation, of course, we fall into that. We're dynasty builders. And so when you took over in 81, 82, that's got to be a pretty good feeling because now you're building for us.
Definitely. And it's when you're the head coach and you live in the community and your children are participating in that program, it puts a burden on your children. It really does, because there will be those that love you, and there will be those of you that might be somewhat envious, and take it out on your children to some extent. And since they can't reach me, then that was the phenomena that I had to work with. But in the wrestling room, in the classroom, it was harmony, and we were building something special. And you could see it developing right with your group. My first Webster state champion was Kevin Gruce.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And I think that was in that second year, somewhere.
Benny Hinchy, I guess, was been that first year.
I didn't have Benny Hinchy. No, he would graduate.
Oh, he graduated.
Yeah, I didn't have. Wow.
Didn't know that.
No, I didn't.
I thought Benny might have been that 1981 class.
He graduated before I came.
Okay.
And so really Kevin Gruce, but that Blue Tea bunch was coming on, and I tell you, a smart thing I did, if I ever did anything smart, I looked around, and there's this Jack McCutcheon, this Webster guy, who had built a powerhouse at Hamilton. And I went to him, and I said, "Hey, Jack," I said, "Man, I'm here now, and I'd sure like for you to join us."
Which Jack McCutcheon's from?
Tulsa Webster. And he said, well, by that time he had moved from Hamilton to East Central. And he said, "Well, you guys are wrestling at Catoosa tomorrow. I'll come watch." And he stood on the wall, I remember, with his arms crossed. And he stood there and watched us a long time. And Jack joined up with us and became a very intricate part of putting that program together.
I was a freshman.
Right.
And I had a great group. I had a pretty
You
tough.
did.
I mean,
Great group.
We had a group of kids that were tough, athletic, and our 9th grade year, we get to walk into a Jack McCutcheon practice, and I'll never forget. And I'm going to talk to Coach McCutcheon about the TJAA, but I'm going to tell you the 1-2-3, 1-2-3, and he's got you mountain climbing at the end of about a 3-hour practice in heated wrestling room that was hot already when you walked in because the varsity and my dad's team had just already worked out. It was we spent a lot of time talking about Jack McCutcheon at lunches, and he was a special guy, still is a special guy. He's a part of our family, and but from that point forward, I really felt as if with the next group, Biff's group, you just started to build to the climax of your 93. Coach Rod's 93, that 94 team that was
It's untouchable.
it was untouchable. Yeah. I mean, you had kids that you coached. The beautiful thing about this is that you got to touch those kids at an early age. You got to touch them, coaching them in football. I mean, there's not a kid that, with the exception of the younger ones, there's not a kid that you didn't coach in football growing up.
That's true.
There's not a kid that you didn't coach in elementary wrestling growing up. I mean, you had been a part of those kids' lives all the way. You did add a few. You added a Kathy. You added maybe what was the heavyweight, big beautiful heavyweight's name?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
And
I had a great big wonderful heavyweight. Gosh, I'm sorry, I'm old and I forget things.
I'm getting old too. Can we get a call in? Yeah.
But we had
Delaney.
Yeah,
Humphrey
Delaney, and there was Jeff Miller was the guy before him at 300 pounds, who got sick the week of the regional, but came into the tournament just right out of the sick bed that possibly would have won it. But then Delaney Humphrey is who you're talking about, and of course his younger brother was a stallion too.
The one Rod's age was, and you had great heavyweights. You had a Mike Bates that was a state placer.
Was a great heavyweight.
You had, but this Humphrey kid, which you had eight state finalists. Rod's senior year, I believe, won 6 championships. You would have had 9 state finalists, and you would have had 7 state champions if Humphrey would have been there, because we took him to Missouri.
Yeah.
I was fortunate at that time to get to hang out with you and roll with you and watch Coach Evatt hit the hospitality rooms. And
yeah, we need to mention Coach Evatt.
We need to mention Coach Evatt, but we're actually getting ready to. But that kid dominated that tournament.
Yeah, Delaney Humphrey.
It just, I mean, talk about fluid, big, and he had one heck of a football season just right for that. I mean, just overlooked, and Webster career is going to come to an end in 1996. Dad, we could go.
Actually, 94 was my last coaching year.
Well, 94, you finished coaching.
Yeah.
But you went to 96.
I did.
And athletic director, and taught a few classes.
I taught some classes.
And retired. I believe that was 23 years.
Yeah.
Of teaching in Tulsa Public Schools.
25.
25 years teaching in Tulsa Public Schools.
25 years.
And my Uncle David Harper had a security business, had a cush job at Oklahoma State University Medical Center.
True.
and you went there 2 years.
No, actually, I put in about a year, and we had that side business going also.
Oh, we had the mowing business. Yeah.
And then of course Holly Evett, which
Well, but let's go back to security business. You know, I mean, you got to sit there at Oklahoma State University Medical Center, and you got to rest, and you got to, man, they had a beautiful cafe there. That Amish.
That's true.
They had that Amish kitchen there.
Very
that,
true.
That we look forward to going. And I'll tell you about that. But Anthony, it was Amish kitchen. It was Amish made, and everything was just from scratch every day. And it's a place that we would have went and had some lunch. But Dad sat there for a year and got approached by.
Well, Holly Evett was teaching. He had left Webster, a wonderful, one of the greatest friends I've ever had in my life, and he was a great strength coach and a part of our program, a part of those state championships, and I loved him. And he went to Cascia Hall as a strength coach. And so they offered him at one point the head wrestling job. And he said, well, you know what? He says, I have a guy I think might be interested, which he hadn't spoken to me about it. There was no discussion. But
That's pretty typical of what he does, though.
Well, he knew that I was not content with what I was doing.
Right.
Because I was making good money and not doing much, and he knew that just didn't work. And so, sure enough, they approached me. Dr. Robert Garrett was in that meeting, you know him, and
Francis Rooney.
And Francis Rooney of Manhattan Construction were in that meeting with the Cascia officials. But Dr. Garrett walked me to my car, and I became the head wrestling coach at Cascia Hall and a history teacher for the next few years.
Started. It had been a program that had existed a little bit before, but it had completely
it was just
went away.
It didn't even have a wrestling facility, and there was a storage building on the campus there, and Dr. Garrett sent. He went to them and said, "Hey, we'll pay their coaching salary and pay his coaching salary, and buy the wrestling mat." And so I became just a wrestling coach that first year, and they hired me the next year to teach.
Those two guys sent you and Coach Evett to Pennsylvania.
They flew us to Pennsylvania. We rented a truck. We had a new light wrestling mat. Me and Coach Evett loaded it. Coach Evett and I loaded it up, drove it back to that warehouse on Main Street in Tulsa.
Yes, sir.
And threw it down and had a wrestling program. And the next year we moved into a storage building on campus.
With what do you think? What do you think that first year you had coming over after school and practicing?
Yeah, we did. It was good. I had Tanner Garrett in the room, which I had to drill with each day, which was torture. And we put together a little wrestling team and wrestled around a little bit.
That first year, I remember you took Tanner was probably about the only guy. Maybe you had one other. Maybe you would take a couple different places.
Tyler was in there.
He was young though. He would have been. Tyler would have been maybe an 8th grader.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, he was young.
Alex Solacek, Tyler. Oh gosh, of course Tanner.
Rooney, the little Rooney kid.
Michael Rooney was in the room. We
Suttons?
did good.
No Suttons?
Mikey Sutton, his older brother, Patrick Sutton was in the room, and then Mikey joined me after that. So
the evolution of Cascia Hall wrestling, though. I mean, I'm here as an adult. I get to see this. It goes from, and I got to go over there and work out in the old doctor building. They hire you to teach. They've put wrestling into the school system. You're getting paid by the school, of course, to teach and to coach. And it's time for a wrestling room on campus.
Of course, Mr. Garrett was always involved in these situations, and they put together a very beautiful little wrestling room with brand new Reslite mats in it. It is a great little wrestling room.
It is.
And So we had a wrestling program, and that little wrestling program, if it hadn't have been for the likes of a Perry, and just about I thought
Or-
about the time I thought we got to the point we could maybe beat Perry, here comes Tuttle. And so we were runner-ups. Those teams have been runner-ups through the years 12 times. And you're there.
You might get a kid though every once in a while to step in. I mean, you had the kid, the 4-time champ, the Mike, whatever his name was.
I was looking at it today. Kenny was a 4-timer. Michael Bissell from Cascia Hall
Bissell
was a
who I was trying to
4-time
think.
state champion.
Right.
And then Eli Griffin would be the last of my
Griffin.
4-time state champions.
But those were few and far between. You built from the time those kids started playing football for you, that you recruited from the football field
Exactly.
into the wrestling room. You started coaching and teaching those kids how to wrestle from that very point.
Yeah, I wanted to be a part of the football program. I, strangely enough, when I was told I was going to be a football assistant at Booker T. Washington, and they were state champions. I said, "Oh my gosh, I don't know anything about it," and they threw me right into the oven. And so, of course, it continued right through Webster, and into I coached football the entire time I was at Cascia Hall, also on the junior high level. But that's where I got my kids.
That's where you got your kids. You started,
Yeah.
it was or the 6th or 7th grade.
Yeah.
You started pulling those kids. I mean, I've run across I don't know how many kids in every facet of life. You run across Cascia Hall. My dad's Ernie Jones. Oh, I played football for Coach Jones. Did he try to get you to wrestle? Yeah, that guy was on us about trying. That guy was on us trying to get us to wrestle. And they all respect and love you. They all think I think all of them had you in class.
They did.
And appreciated all your stories. But you did that, and you won multiple. I mean, it's not like you did it once, you did it twice. You did it multiple runner-ups there. You built a wrestling program at Booker T. Washington, and you left.
Well, strangely enough, your senior year, we were in an overtime match with Howard Moore and John Simon.
Two great, phenomenal.
It was in about the 5th or 6th overtime.
That's right.
And if John had won that, we win it.
Yeah.
We lost the state, John and Howard, classic battle.
Classic. Unbelievable.
One slip up, and Howard scored and beat John Simon, who was a fantastic athlete.
Moore went to UCL and was
A national
2 or
champion.
3-time national champion.
His whole family was just. And we lost the state championship that year by a half a point.
Half a point.
And those 12 runner-ups, they hurt. I think we lost one by 1.5, one by 3.5. Man, that's awful close.
Yeah.
That's awful close.
Those are the ones, I mean, in 2008, we won the dual state championship at Broken Arrow, and we go to the state tournament, and we had just a good regional tournament, but just had a horrible final. Just went backwards in the final, and it was because I took a breath. And they saw me take a breath because I was just satisfied with the 11 that we qualified. And we lost that state. So there's nothing more haunting, is what I'm trying to get at. There's nothing more haunting than taking second place by 1 point. How about this, taking third place by 1 point? I mean, there's nothing more haunting than that, and you're runner-ups. But it also is an indication or indicator that you're
there.
No, that you're a badass dude. And you've been a badass dude our entire lives. I mean, here we are. And you went from 2022, I believe, to present. You're Broken Arrow High School. You helped Coach Rod there. Dad, you're 81 years old. You're going back for year number 51 to teach, and just only teach, because you do enjoy teaching. And
I love teaching.
You enjoy routine of getting up and getting your 45-minute workout in and eating your cereal and drinking your coffee and going someplace. And that's why you're doing it, and you're just going to keep doing it as long as you want to do it, because we all love you and we think that's a big deal. But look at this. We have, amongst me, you, Biff, and Rod, 19 state championships as coaches.
Yeah, I have a little. I think
We're the only family in the state that's ever done that.
I think we are the only family that's ever done it, where every member of that family has won state championships as coaches. And if that middle boy had the opportunity to do it again, he would probably win some more state championships. The younger one is going to win more state championships.
He's going to win.
And of course, you are, I think, the winningest 6A coach in the history of Oklahoma wrestling. So a family, because to us, it's not an after-school activity. It's an institution.
And so let's get in this. You know, here we are. And, you know, I look at Steve Ferguson, I look at the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. I don't want to be an individual National Wrestling Hall of Fame. I want to be in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. They give a family award every year. And I want all four of us to go in because I don't think there's another family, Coach Ferguson, I don't think there's another family in the state that each of them individually as a head coach has won a state championship. So, you know, I don't know where we sign up or what we do to get into that, but I think it's a very deserving thing. And I don't think anybody's done it. I mean, you know, Rodney wrote a beautiful article the other day, and it talked about Jerry Billings, which was your mentor, being a prodigy of a Gallagher, a Griffin, a Roderick, and Billings, and then Jones.
Think about that.
But here we are, little old West Tulsa guys, simple, just hard-nosed. We sat there and we watched you every night. We watched you every night. Sit down in your chair during wrestling season. We watched you take your ass off to freestyle practices every spring, which we were playing baseball.
True.
I was, and Biff and Rod kind of at the latter of their careers started turning to freestyle because they were smarter than I was. I don't know. I think I had some pro baseball aspirations.
Certainly.
Pro baseball aspirations.
I don't know what happened then.
The curveball is what really got me.
The curveball.
But you look at this, and you know, we've been around coaches. We've been to colleges. We've been to. But I feel as if we're part of the Ernie Jones school. Because how in the hell have we all won state championships?
Well, you know, I go back, and I guess I didn't say enough, but to me, Jerry Billings was a very confident individual and somewhat brash and somewhat might anger you to some extent. To me, he was everything. And I just believed in him so much that his education at those places, the way he coached wrestling, the way he handled his teams, it molded me. It made the difference. He told my mother once, and this is important, I believe he meant it, but whether he did or not, but we had my senior year wrestling introduction to the season, and my sweet little mother would go with me to that. And afterwards, he introduced himself to her, and he said, "Mrs. Snyder," he said, "if I had a room full of Ernie Joneses, we'd win state championships every year." Now, irregardless of whether, I think he meant that, but whether or not, to me, that was so important. And for my mother to hear that. And so not only was he a great wrestling coach, but he knew what to say. And I think at that moment he was sincere.
Absolutely.
And then, you
I
know,
think there was a fake moment in Mr. Billings.
I appreciated him so much, and then there's, you know, I look at Holly Evan as being so important in our lives, and Jack McCutcheon being so important in our lives, and in our careers too.
Got to watch how Jack McCutcheon did it too.
That's true.
And so it's just we've been blessed. You know, we watched this guy, like I said, get home from middle of the season set, and he had his chair, and the TV was on, and he would sit there and he would write wrestling practices out while we were doing probably not homework, but probably should have been doing homework. But we didn't. We had all that education stuff down. But we saw that. We noticed that. We noticed the demeanor in the wrestling room, how he related to the kids. And the deal is this: you don't go to some place you try, but it's something that you just naturally you have in you, and he had that in you. He related to us all. You know, here's his sons in his high school wrestling room struggling to try to attain whatever we could possibly attain, but we were a part of the group.
That's right.
We were a part of the group. He didn't treat us any better. He didn't treat us any worse. You young wrestling coaches that are coaching your sons, I thank God every day that I didn't have a son, because I don't know if I could have done what he did. I've got girls, and I'm pretty hard on my girls. So we grew up watching this, the practice on the windowsill, the development, the plan. You have a plan. Now we kind of went away from having maybe printed up on the thing, but you can believe every time we walk into a wrestling room, we had a plan. We knew what we were going to try to accomplish that day. That's from him. The old TJAA technique maybe stems from the old Okie Aggie style wrestling technique. Sure. You know, you develop technique and you expand on technique, but when I call it putting in place, that original 3 months that you start your wrestling season was what we learned from this man. And I call them plays. Waist and ankle, take, tight gut, chop, knee up the butt. All of that stuff was what he taught us.
I remember a person, I don't know, when are you going to start teaching open moves?
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
Yeah. And I said, well, I don't guess I ever will, because to me it was always foundation. To me, it's very simple. You teach fundamentals, and then as a young man starts to develop, you see that he has a certain style. Then you try to possibly enhance his style. But you don't teach style, you teach fundamentals, and then you enhance their abilities.
Which, from a newer perspective, we took that and we would teach the same thing. And then there's a point in time in the year, the focus is the focus. You've got guys that you know are going to go to regional wrestling tournament. And guys that are not. You know, say mid-January, you've pretty much, there might be some battles going on, but the focus is the focus. That usually they're not. You know who's going to be your team going there. And you focus, you enhance, and it's everything philosophically has come from him. Now, we've been other places. I've had David James was a coach that I got to watch. I got to watch a great man up in Bismarck, North Dakota.
Exactly.
Milo Trusty, which was, man, I tell you, if I just got to spend 4 years with Milo Trusty, I got to be around Mike Clevengers. I've got to Bill Harlow's. I've seen a lot of great coaches, but this is the best one in the history of my life. I'm not in the coaching profession anymore, but I think he's still got a book out there somewhere. He probably got practice of coaching wrestling. And if anybody would ever just look at it and pay attention to it, you could be successful in the room. But you also got to have the heart. You've got to have the intent. You've got to have the special sauce. I don't know how to just.
There's a passion for it.
Yeah, there's a passion.
It's about individuals, and what I honestly believe that, irregardless of how you placed, if you really put your heart and soul into wrestling, whether you became a champion, whether you placed, but you know that you put your heart and soul into it, then it's going to pay you back. It is. It's going to reward you.
How many kids have walked up to you that were in the room? They never made a varsity lineup. They never got to star. They got to come up to you and talk about the difference that it's made in their life.
Yes. I think if you spoke to them, they would say that time when they sincerely put themselves into it, that it's one of the most rewarding periods of their life. Not just me. the institution itself.
Right.
And I guess ingraining them into this is what it's all about. I love wrestling for what it stands for and what it really represents. And you could never place in a tournament and benefit from it. And if you truly bought into it. And we could go on forever and ever talking about that.
Well, you are the GOAT, and you've touched a lot of people, and a lot of people love you. But I don't think as much as your kids, your granny, and Aunt loves you.
I like Anthony. I think, we might ought to bring him into the family.
Yeah, we might ought to bring him into the family. We've sat here, I don't know how long now, quite some time with Coach Ernie Jones, the GOAT of Oklahoma wrestling. And I've had to get this on camera and film because, first of all, he is my dad. This is Father's Day weekend. And you got anything else for us, Coach?
I think it's a great Father's Day gift to get to talk about the institution of wrestling. And certainly, people ask me who my greatest wrestlers were, and I think about my three boys when I think about that, but maybe that's partiality. I don't know what it is.
Well, it's partiality for sure when you're talking about me. Wait, maybe you loved us the most out of all of your
I think I probably did, but I loved them all. I loved them all.
You loved them all, but maybe not as much as your three boys. You had a little bit more.
But I appreciate the conversation and the talking about wrestling because I could do that for eternity. So.
Yeah, we could sit here and we could, like I said, there could be an episode on each one of these little details. And I might pull you back in. We get to talking about this TJAA. I might pull you back in on some, because I think that is going to be a pretty hot topic. And so that's kind of where we're at.
Tulsa Junior Wrestling Association, there's guys out there that were heavily embedded in it and would certainly have an opinion.
I want to go dig them up.
Yeah.
I want to go dig them up and talk to them.
If you go back into it, they're very deep. Kilgore would be, of course, he was so phenomenal that he would be an interesting person.
Absolutely, yeah.
But everything just, the first time I ever saw him, I was at my brother's house, and I saw this kid riding a wheelie a block
across
away.
the street, right?
Mm-hmm. He's riding a wheelie about a block away, and I thought, that's pretty good. He jerked a wheelie. He didn't jerk a wheelie. He rode it about 2 blocks on a little bitty Stingray bicycle. So, kind of impressive guy.
Yeah, he might have had some talent. Well, Dad, we love you.
Love you guys.
It's nice to be back. Now, if I can keep my EP going over here, that'll be. I promise him we're not going to be this long, but this was too easy to go as long. Thank you, Anthony. What is it we've always got to say? Like, comment, subscribe. Dynasty Wrestling. Appreciate you, and till next time.